The night air was crisp as the crew of Korean Air Cargo 8509 prepared for takeoff. It was December 22, 1999, and the Boeing 747-200F was scheduled for a cargo flight from London Stansted Airport to Milan, Italy. Captain Park Yong-chul, a seasoned pilot with years of experience, adjusted his seat while his first officer, Kim, went through the pre-flight checklist. The cockpit was filled with the low hum of instruments as the aircraft's systems came to life. Ground crew worked meticulously, loading the cargo into the massive freighter, ensuring everything was in place for a smooth departure. However, beneath the professional facade of the crew, there was tension, a silent battle of authority and obedience that had been simmering for far too long. Captain Park had a reputation. Known for his rigid discipline and intolerance for challenges, to his authority, he was not the kind of leader who welcomed input from his subordinates. First Officer Kim, though competent, knew better than to question the captain's decisions. The airline's culture placed great emphasis on hierarchy, where junior officers were expected to follow orders without question. It was an unspoken rule that had been ingrained in Korean Air's operations for decades. But this rigid structure would soon prove catastrophic. As the engines roared to life and the aircraft taxied to the runway, an uneasy feeling settled over the cockpit. First Officer Kim noticed something odd on the artificial horizon indicator. It showed an unusual attitude, suggesting that the aircraft's left side attitude director indicator, ADI, was faulty. A crucial instrument that provides pilots with information about the plane's orientation. The ADI was an essential component in night flying. A malfunction could be deadly. Kim hesitated before pointing it out, knowing that Captain Park was not the type to appreciate unsolicited advice. Still, he gathered his courage and mentioned it. "Captain, the ADI seems off. We should cross-check with the standby indicator," Kim suggested cautiously. Captain Park barely glanced at the instrument. "Just follow my lead," he said, his tone dismissive. The cockpit fell into silence as the aircraft received clearance for takeoff. With a deep rumble, the massive 747 thundered down the runway, its wheels lifting off the ground as it climbed into the night sky. The faulty ADI remained unchecked. As the aircraft ascended, First Officer Kim kept a close eye on the instruments. The standby ADI showed a stable climb, but the captain's primary ADI still indicated a bank to the left. The logical step would have been to cross-check with the right-side instruments or the backup system. But Captain Park remained fixated on his primary indicator, convinced it was correct. Kim felt a knot tighten in his stomach. The aircraft was gradually banking to the left, and the Ground Proximity Warning System, GPWS, issued an alert. "Too low, terrain," the robotic voice echoed through the cockpit, a chilling reminder of the imminent danger. Kim looked at the captain, hoping for a reaction, but Park dismissed it as a minor glitch. "Keep climbing," he commanded, gripping the yoke tightly. Kim's instincts screamed at him to take action. He could see the altimeter decreasing instead of increasing, but the ingrained culture of obedience held him back. To openly challenge the captain would be career suicide. The flight engineer, seated behind them, shifted uncomfortably but remained silent as well. The aircraft continued its deadly leftward roll, its trajectory taking it lower and lower towards the ground. As they neared Hatfield Forest, the situation became critical. The night sky outside was a black void, offering no visual reference. The only reality was the instrument panel in front of them, and half of it was lying. The right side ADI, the backup system, and the very laws of physics indicated that they were in a dangerous bank, but Captain Park refused to believe it. Another warning blared, this time more urgent. "Too low terrain, pull up." Kim's pulse raced. He opened his mouth, about to override the captain's control, when Park shouted, "We're fine!" The next second, the aircraft plunged toward the earth. The ground came rushing up at an unforgiving speed. The Boeing 747-200F, a behemoth of the skies, was now completely out of control. The warning alarms screeched, and First Officer Kim finally found his voice. "Captain, pull up now!" His hand shot forward, instinctively reaching for the yoke to assist in correcting the bank. It was too late. The left wingtip clipped the treetops, sending a violent shudder through the entire aircraft. The massive fuselage twisted as one of vine. The engines sheared off upon impact. In a fraction of a second, the plane exploded into a fiery inferno, illuminating the dark forest with an apocalyptic glow. The cockpit was crushed instantly, killing Captain Park and First Officer Kim on impact. The flight engineer, trapped in the wreckage, had no time to react before the flames consumed the fuselage. On the ground, witnesses saw the fireball rise into the sky. The explosion was so intense that it could be seen from miles away. Emergency responders rushed to the scene, but there was little they could do. The wreckage was scattered across the dense forest, burning debris embedded in the frozen ground. The air smelled of aviation fuel and scorched metal. It was a catastrophic end to what should have been a routine cargo flight. The crash of Korean Air Cargo 8509 sent shockwaves through the aviation industry. Investigators from the UK's Air Accidents Investigation Branch, AIB, and Korean authorities descended upon the wreckage, determined to uncover what had gone wrong. Black box recordings revealed a harrowing truth. The crew had been misled by a faulty ADI, but the greater failure was human. The rigid cockpit hierarchy and an unwillingness to challenge authority had doomed the flight. Korean Air, already under scrutiny for past safety incidents, faced harsh criticism. The airline's training culture, which discouraged co-pilots from speaking up against captains, was identified as a primary factor in the accident. The International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO, emphasized the importance of crew resource management, CRM, advocating for open communication and mutual decision-making in cockpits worldwide. In the years following the crash, Korean Air implemented sweeping changes. They revamped their training programs, encouraged pilots to challenge questionable decisions, and fostered a culture where safety took precedence over hierarchy. The lessons of Flight 8509 became a case study in aviation schools, a grim reminder of the dangers of blind obedience. But for the crew of that doomed flight, it was too late. The lives lost that night became a somber lesson in the annals of aviation history, echoing the critical message. In the skies, questioning authority isn't insubordination, it's survival. In the immediate aftermath of the crash, investigators from the UK's Air Accidents Investigation Branch, AAIB, and Korean aviation authorities combed through the charred wreckage of Flight 8509. Black boxes were recovered, their data crucial to understanding what had gone wrong. Early indications pointed toward an instrument failure, but as experts analyzed the cockpit voice recorder, CVR, a darker truth emerged. The tension in the cockpit, the ignored warnings, and the culture of blind obedience painted a grim picture of an avoidable tragedy. As forensic experts meticulously pieced together the aircraft's final moments, the flight data recorder, FDR, revealed the increasing leftward bank, contradicting the captain's reliance on the faulty ADI. In hearings, held in London and Seoul, airline representatives faced tough questions about their training methods. Survivors' families sat through these sessions, their grief turning into frustration as bureaucratic answers failed to provide closure. The world watched as Korean Air struggled to explain why a highly trained flight crew had ignored their own instruments and warnings. News of the crash spread rapidly, with major media outlets dissecting every available detail. Aviation experts weighed in on the dangers of hierarchical flight decks, pointing to previous Korean Air accidents with similar underlying issues. Public outrage swelled as articles and reports highlighted the airline's troubling safety record. Aviation. Forums buzzed with discussions among pilots worldwide. Many shared their experiences about the difficulties of questioning superiors in rigidly structured airlines. Former Korean Air pilots stepped forward, some anonymously, revealing how dissent in the cockpit was often discouraged or outright punished. Korean Air's reputation took a severe hit. The South Korean government, already pressured by previous incidents, launched its own investigation seeking to hold the airline accountable. Flight schools and training institutions revised their curricula to emphasize crew resource management, CRM. But the damage had been done. The world had seen yet another tragic consequence of outdated cockpit culture. The lessons from Flight 8509 forced Korean Air to implement a series of sweeping reforms. The airline collaborated with international aviation safety experts, revamping pilot training and reinforcing a policy where all flight crew members had the right and responsibility to speak up in dangerous situations. Crew resource management. CRM training became mandatory, emphasizing open communication and equal decision-making authority among all pilots in the cockpit. Hierarchies were restructured to prioritize safety over rank. The airline also modernized its fleet, incorporating additional fail-safes for instrument discrepancies to ensure that no future flight would rely on a single faulty indicator. Other airlines in Asia took note, with several implementing similar reforms. The International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO, used the crash as a case study, further reinforcing global aviation safety standards. The ripple effects of the disaster were felt industry-wide, but for the families of the victims, these changes came too late. As time passed, the memories of Flight 8509's crew and their tragic fate remained vivid. Memorials were held annually at the crash site, where family members gathered to honor their lost loved ones. Korean Air, acknowledging its role in the accident, funded scholarships for aspiring pilots to promote safety-first training programs. Some families pursued legal action, pushing for stricter government oversight on airline training and operational procedures. Lawsuits against Korean Air resulted in settlements, but no amount of compensation could undo the tragic loss. The victims' names were engraved on a memorial stone at Hatfield Forest, a solemn reminder of the perils of complacency and blind adherence to hierarchy. Pilots visiting the site often took a moment of silence, reflecting on the importance of speaking up in critical situations. Decades later, Flight 8509 remained a cautionary tale in aviation history. Airlines around the world adopted new safety cultures, emphasizing that even the most experienced pilots must be challenged when errors arise. Korean Air, once notorious for its cockpit hierarchy, became a model of safety transformation. The story of Flight 8509 found its place in pilot training programs, aviation safety seminars, and investigative case studies. It was a story of tragedy, but also of change, a testament to the hard lessons learned from ignoring warning signs. For the aviation industry, the echoes of too low terrain served as a chilling reminder that in the sky, questioning authority is not defiance. It is survival.